The American Heart Association's Heart Walk helps fund their work supporting survivors of heart disease and stroke.
It's a great way for us to celebrate all of those people who have survived heart disease and stroke and to memorialize those that haven't.
Andrea Uten is the executive director of the AHA. She says this event raises about $400,000 each year.
Those dollars, of course, come back to our community in a variety of different ways through supportive research or CPR events that we're doing in the community and making sure that we're, of course, promoting longer, healthier lives.
It's more than just a walk, though. For many, it can be therapeutic, a time to share their stories.
And it is a really emotional time for a lot of people that come out because they are thinking about their own health, the many things that they've survived themselves or their family members that maybe they've lost.
Among the survivors taking the walk along Keeneland's grounds, EKU head football coach Walt Wells. Wells suffered a cardiac episode in his office last year.
The next thing I know, I wake up 4 days later in UK hospital. And luckily a survivor of a cardiac arrest event where I had 99% blockage of my widowmaker.
He credits his survival to the quick action of those around him that day. They quickly called 911, performed CPR, and used an AED.
So the use of an AED and the use of great CPR training is the only reason that I stand here with my wife this morning and got to see my kids this morning when I was walking out the door.
Wells was back to coaching a week later. Now he promotes the importance of CPR training.
Right in the center of the chest.
Many had the opportunity to learn hands-only CPR after completing the walk.
Keeping blood moving through the body, through the organs, through the brain, those important organs, it increases the chances of that person not only waking up, but waking up with a good quality of life.
In Lexington, Samantha Valentino, WKYT.